Okay, I think this is set up properly. This is very informal. It's what you would call common videos. Absolutely nothing extravagant. Not much of a setup. Just a green background and a gray shirt. And I have a bunch of other shirts that I could use. But the videos here are not what I would call intended for presentation. The reason I'm doing this is for the audio. It's the actual audio for the podcasts that I'm going to send out, which is really my version of podcasts. I'm simply going to put audio files on my drive at Google that you can download. Now those will be chopped and sliced and cut to pieces, pasted here and there, because it's not really intended to be seen in theaters across the world or heard in music halls across the world. It's podcasting, it's audio narrations, and in this case, it's got a video that goes with it. Each one will have a video. And that's actually ancillary, that's auxiliary to the purpose. The real purpose is the audio. So if you actually ever come across the video version of this, it will look quite different from the audio, from the way the audio sounds. Because I'm just going to do whatever I want to. This is my living room. I'm going to go here and go there, drink what I want to drink. Right now I'm drinking some tea, blow my nose, scratch my ass, I don't care. And in the audio, you will never hear that. Because the audio will be chopped and sliced and pasted into a stream that I want you to hear from the original videoed version of the audio. That's what this is, the video version of the audio. So, I've been debating for 2 years on how to do this. For 2 years, this camera has been sitting here in the living room. Well, it looks good in the living room. Kind of reminder that maybe next year I should do something like this. And next year it serves as a reminder that next year I should do something like this. And hopefully it works, but like I said, it's only for the audio. Now some people, there's no accounting for tastes. Some people will just love the hell out of these videos if they ever get to see them. Okay. So bleach. Hey, I tell you, the reason I'm starting to do the podcasts, or I've got to come up with a name for it, what should I say? Audio narration files. Audio narration files. The reason I am starting this is because I lost the fight with the 1,000-page crocodile. I lost the fight with a 1,000-page crocodile. Now, when you're writing, and I've been writing this one thing for more than a year now. When you're writing and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up, it's not like accumulating pancakes or collecting playing cards or going out and putting together a bug collection. It's nothing like that at all. It's not that permanently accumulative, you know, accumulative. It's not that permanently accumulative. In other words, you can take away some of the things that you put in much easier than you could with some other kind of collection. There's a downside to that, because you might accidentally delete something that you really needed. So as you build up a large document, this is a secret that I'm sharing, ta-da! As you build up a large document, make a lot of copies on a lot of drives. So if there's a catastrophic failure in any one drive or machine, you've got 5 or 6 different copies of the very same thing on that many drives. Literally. And as you go along, you will instinctively reach points where you feel, well, it's been this number of version for long enough. I think I'll save the whole thing again with the next higher number. Let's say you're on 22. The 22nd accumulation, the 22nd enlargement or development of the document. And for some reason, technical or just instinctual, you think, well, I'll make the next saving process number 23. Then you go ahead and do that. You end up with all of them. Right now, I think I'm at 67. And I've got 1 through 67 saved 6 different ways on 6 different drives. Not that I will permanently save them that way, but this is one of the things that happens. Well, I was fighting this crocodile because as you advance in the numbered versions, and as it expands and expands, and you're careful not to delete something that is important, and that does happen, and because you've got 5 other copies, you can paste back into the master copy what you accidentally deleted. As you grow and grow this document, and you approach 1,000 pages, the 1,000 page crocodile appears and grabs you by the neck and by the shoulders and by the fingers. It tries to drag you into that other world beyond 1,000 pages. Tries to get its jaws around your neck and tries to drag you through the barrier of 1,000 pages. Ah! Boing! And you're gone. And you may not come back. Well, I had already gone through some preliminary editing, in which case I condense things, decide certain things are redundant, and I take them out. It had taken me a while to reach 1,000 pages already before the crocodile showed up. Then there he was, chewing on my tail. And I knew I was in trouble, so I backed off to about 900 pages, and I broke free. But there's so much to write in this message that I just kept going and kept going. And when you get to about 960 pages, the crocodile shows up again and grabs you by an arm or your tail or your neck and tries to drag you through the barrier of 1,000 pages, beyond which you may never be seen again. And I backed off again. And I went down to about 920 pages. But last week I hit 1,000 pages again, and the crocodile got me, and I am completely and forever beyond 1,000 pages in this document. I had the feeling that if it grew to be that big, and it looks like it's going to be more like 1,500, if it grew to be that big, it could pose problems to my readers if they're not ready for it. If they're just floating along, like I hope they're not, marking time like I hope they're not doing much like I hope they're not, if they're not being creative, if they're not doing their own writing or their own thinking, their own researches, and then I hit them with 1,500 pages of something, even though they're part of the truth and they're part of the human species, there could be a shock, an internal culture shock that I want to avoid. And I'm quite aware that some of you might be really involved in your own writing and your own artistic abilities, and I hope you are. I hope you really are. But even then, you'd have a different kind of shock once I put 1,500 pages on the internet as one work. A disruption. If you are doing something good, I do not really want to disrupt that. And I was thinking of what I can do, how I can prepare anybody, what I can say. Why don't I make an audio? I was thinking that about a year ago. I think it was a year ago, yeah. And the big fight with influenza happened in 2016. That made everything worse. I have since found the cure for influenza, which nobody wants to know about. And I know what it is. And of course, the insurance medicine quacks and West Desalians are absolutely mortified with fear that I will tell the world again what the cure for influenza is. You watch, I will not have it this year. Watch, I will not have it this year. I'm not going to tell you again what it is, but I just took the cure again this morning. I take the cure once a week. But I'm not going to waste my time again trying to convince anyone that I have discovered something that they all need to know. How many times have I done that already? How many times have I already put out something that everybody needs to know and everybody ignores it? Or they get it in the back of the head like a boomerang. Well, I've got 1,500 pages coming, and it's a real ass kicker. 1,500 pages of pure ass kicking. With some fun mixed in, and a lot of lessons. A lot of lessons. Some really good information. It's not like anything I've written before, and I'm not going to elaborate about it. You will all see it, read it, and not believe it. You will not believe that you're seeing it and reading it. But I want to make these audios as kind of a lead into it, kind of a introduction, like this is going to happen, it's on its way, it's way beyond cancellation. The crocodile has me by the right ankle right now, and it's pulling me towards the 2,000 page barrier, which I'm going to avoid like death. I've already got some coming up that are that long, and I've got to save my efforts for them. God knows what beast is waiting at the 2,000 page barrier. what I wanted to say here is it's coming, it's going to happen. It's going to be more than 1,000 pages. It's sectionalized. So you do not have to read the entire work to get the meaning. And as a matter of fact, there are so many meanings in this. That's part of the shock to it. And you could simply read this for months and go back and forth, forwards and backwards. You could have a great time with this if you are a human being. Of course, our enemies will have a very bad time with this, and that's what it's all about. But we humans will have a very good time with this, and that's what it's all about. So one of the other things I wanted to say is, getting to the point, what do you do with a very large document that is not like anything you've ever done before? When you get a book that's 1,000 pages, what do you do with it? I've been at this for more than a year, and I've already read 5 books while I was writing this one on a variety of topics. I just finished a book on the German invasion of France in World War II. You notice how I go off to side pockets and come back? Well, this is actually pertaining to what I'm saying, because that book is not 1,500 pages, but I think it's about 400 pages. And it's packed with information about how and why the nation of France fell apart at the beginning of World War II. And it is so absolutely illuminative about our current situation and crisis here in America with queer governments and queer political parties and every kind of nasty, twisted, dirty, sick freak case that only Satan could have imagined in all government, at all levels, and in all political parties. It's like trying to choose between trash cans. You've got 2 big trash cans, and they've been accumulating grime and filth and bugs and maggots and refuse for months, and composting inside of their trash cans with the lids on. Dumbo crap and repo crap. Now, you're supposed to take the lids off simultaneously and choose between stenches. That is what politics has become in this country. Worse than what happened in France prior to World War II. Now, a lot of you know virtually nothing about this. You may know there was a World War I, which the Allies won, and France was one of the Allies. Germany lost World War I. Big time. But so did the Allies, big time, and they never admitted it. The carnage of World War I is just absolutely inadmissible and intolerable. Just psychotic. The millions and millions and millions of soldiers that died in Europe during World War I is completely unconscionable, completely, eternally psychotic. An example of unbelievably incompetent malfeasance on the part of Allied commands and German commands, Allied generals and German generals. Just lunacy. Terrible. And then it was over because they exhausted each other. They ran out of millions of people to kill. If you're not of a strong constitution, try to avoid reading about World War I because it's grim. It's awful. And France and England and America won and Germany lost. And everybody thought that's it. No more world wars. 20 years later, man, the whole thing starts again. However, this time the political situation in France had deteriorated terribly. It had affected the military command structure in France terribly. France had fallen apart. Victorious in World War I, by the beginning of World War II, now having to face Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Third Reich, they had corroded and crumbled into complete incompetency. Even so, they put up a big fight and tried to keep the Germans out, but there was no way they could stop the Germans this time. And Germany just simply toppled France. Cut it in half, north and south, made a puppet government out of the south, and completely occupied the north of France, including Paris. But how it happened, why it happened, where the mistakes were made, the incredible sequences of corruption and stupidity, how the Allies did not help the French, did not help the French. Oh, hell no. The British sent in the British Expeditionary Force, and they almost got their asses burnt to a crisp and barely escaped to Dunkirk. And that was it for France. But the sign was on the wall already. The cards had already been played. France was going to fall because France had no competency. It had no real, true human leadership. Everybody was bonkers. And when you read that book, and I think it was called The Fall of France in 1941, oh my God, it is so much like the terrible, horrible politics of America today that it shocks you. Well, that was one of the books I read while I've been writing this document, which is now more than 1,000 pages. I happened to read another book called Falling Aces. Falling Aces was also about World War I. It's a real good book. It's about 400 pages, very condensed and quite descriptive, and it's got a very interesting style. In that book, there is a large overview narration that explains to you why World War I happened in the crazy ways that it did, and how this applied to the air forces of the French and the English and the Americans and the Germans. The book is about the World War I fighter aces, which is why it's called Falling Aces. And you would think it would be a glorious account of all of their great heroic deeds, and that is in there, but you learn quickly by reading Falling Aces that air combat is directly linked to land-based operations, land combat, almost inextricably. Sometimes you're let loose if you're an Air Force pilot and you're allowed to engage in the air and there's no real land operation going on. That's part of what's happening. But in World War I, that kind of frivolity, which created the aces to begin with, quickly came to a screeching halt when these massive, monstrous slaughters of armies started to happen on the Western Front. And the body counts exceeded 1 million. Air-based operations, airborne operations, all of the fighter aces suddenly became attackers of ground installations and ground armies. And they seldom fought each other after that. They were mostly fighting the opposing enemy military units, many of which had ACAC anti-aircraft guns. And from that point on, in the book, you start seeing closely what happened on land. The book is about the World War I fighter pilots, the aces of World War I. But because airborne operations are so closely tied to ground operations, you reach a point in the book where you become completely immersed in what's happening on land. And then you go back to what the aces are doing about it and the bomber pilots are doing about it, and you get the integration there. You see how it's all working together. But in the process, this guy has to explain why unthinkable amounts of mayhem and murder happened on the ground. And it's sickening. It's absolutely ludicrous. Someone, even a common soldier, should have just shot every general. Common soldiers on each side should have just taken out their revolvers and shot dead those commanding generals. One shot could have saved 100,000 soldiers. 10 shots could save 1 million soldiers. Save their lives because those generals were insane. Insane. Which led Douglas MacArthur decades later to comment that only your mediocre commanders in the field turn in heavy losses. And he had completely different ways of fighting World War II in the Pacific. I'm talking about World War I and the lunacy that happened in World War I. In World War II, MacArthur says, in his own way, only mediocre commanders in the field turn in heavy losses, which means that absolute imbecility that happened in France in World War I is not going to happen here. And he very successfully demonstrated that. So I'm reading these books while I'm writing what I'm writing. And I read 3 other books so far. I'm on a 6th book right now, which could have a lot to do with a few entries in the document that I'm writing. You'd be amazed at how condensed this all is. You might read something that's only a page long, and it came from 100 pages that I read. And I have distilled it down to 1 page in what you're about to read. There's a lot of condensation going on here. And so I read those books, and I read the political aspects of it. And everything that I seem to do, everything that I seem to read and research, confirms what I am doing. I keep getting confirmations about what I am doing and what I am writing like you just wouldn't believe. It would take me entire messages to explain to you what those confirmations are. I really do. I get it all the time. Every time I open a book, every time I go into a website on the internet that has anything to do with politics or the history of politics or warfare or the history of warfare, there it is. Confirmation, I am doing it right. I am right about what I am writing.